The robot I'm holding in my hand is this one, and it's been created by two students, Alex and Daniel. So this weighs a little more than 1/10 of a pound. It consumes about 15 watts of power, and as you can see, it's about 8 inches in diameter. So let me give you just a very quick tutorial on how these robots work. So it has 4 rotors. If you spin these rotors at the same speed, the robot hovers. If you increase the speed of each of these rotors, then the robot flies up. It accelerates up. Of course, if the robot were tilted, inclined to the horizontal, then it would accelerate in this direction. So to get it to tilt, there's one of 2 ways of doing it. So in this picture, you see that rotor 4 is spinning faster, and rotor 2 is spinning slower. And when that happens, there's a moment that causes this robot to roll. And the other way around, if you increase the speed of rotor 3 and decrease the speed of rotor 1, then the robot pitches forward. And then finally, if you spin opposite pairs of rotors faster than the other pair, then the robot yaws about the vertical axis. So an onboard processor essentially looks at what motions need to be executed and combines these motions and figures out what commands to send to the motors 600 times a second. And that's basically how this thing operates. So one of the advantages of this design is when you scale things down, the robot naturally becomes agile. So this should be clear in these videos. On the bottom right, you see a robot performing a 360-degree flip in less than half a second. Multiple flips, a little more time. So here, the processors on board are getting feedback from accelerometers and gyros on board and calculating, like I said before, commands at 600 times a second to stabilize this robot. So on the left, you see Daniel throwing this robot up into the air, and it shows you how robust the control is. No matter how you throw it, the robot recovers and comes back to him. So one fundamental problem that the robots have to solve if they are to be autonomous is essentially figure out how to get from point A to point B. And so what the robot does is it plans what we call a minimum snap trajectory. So to remind you of physics, you have position, derivative, velocity, then acceleration, and then comes jerk, and then comes snap. So this robot minimizes snap. So what that effectively does is produces a smooth and graceful motion. And it does that avoiding obstacles. So let me show you some examples of what these minimum snap trajectories look like. And in the first video, you'll see the robot going from point A to point B through an intermediate point. So the robot is obviously capable of executing any curved trajectory. So these are circular trajectories where the robot pulls about 2 Gs. Here you have overhead motion capture cameras on the top that tell the robot where it is 100 times a second. It also tells the robot where these obstacles are. And the obstacles can be moving, and here you'll see Daniel throw this hoop into the air. Well, the robot is calculating the position of the hoop and trying to figure out how to best go through the hoop. So as an academic, we're always trained to be able to jump through hoops to raise funding for our labs, and we get our robots to do that. So another thing the robot can do is it remembers pieces of trajectory that it learns or is pre-programmed. So here you see the robot combining a motion that builds up momentum and then changes its orientation and then recovers. So it has to do this because this gap in the window is only slightly larger than the width of the robot. So just like a diver stands on a springboard and then jumps off it to gain momentum, and then does this pirouette, this 2.5 somersault, and then gracefully recovers, this robot is basically doing that. So it knows how to combine little bits and pieces of trajectories to do these fairly difficult tasks. So why build robots like this?